Let's get rid of the top 10. How's it, everybody? Celtic Link here. We're back for another Dokkan Battle video. In today's video, we have quite the predicament. We have not had a Dokkan Fest TUR in probably the longest stretch. I think our last TUR release was the Mercenary Tau, and in fact, I believe that was the last time we did a tier list too, was the release of Mercenary Tau and AGL Ginyu EZA. So in this video, we are going to revisit our TUR tier lists, but with a twist. Having the landscape in the 10th anniversary year change so drastically since year 10 anniversary and global Dokkan campaign, I've decided to scrap the old way of doing things. You see, I was one of the first people to adopt the dual format of having both long and short events, but still structuring things with a 1 through 10. And as we evolved through the Global Dokkan campaign, we began to realize that more and more units are being released with specific fights and matchups in mind, right? When you think like the GDC LRs, for example, many of them were designed around the special battle fight right here. Gogeta, for example, completely and utterly decimates each and every stage here. Same with the Blues and Rose, and Omega struggles a little, but then Omega got his time to shine with the release of the Hybrid Saiyans Red Zone. So it would appear that they had began to design units with specific fights in mind, and this was present during the TURs that EZA during this campaign. So initially I had thought the idea would be to create a tier list based on matchup, but I felt now, more thinking on it, that doing a matchup-based tier list, while informative, right, doesn't really... It's too hyper-focused. We won't be able to see the bigger picture of all units within that, right? I could sit here and talk all day about each and every unit and their specific matchups, and we wouldn't have any real kind of structure there. So what I've decided to do is create a your standard tier list. Instead of a 1 through 10, we're going to do a Z through D tier list, which means we can have multiple units within the same category, as I feel that this might be a better way to assess and really look at the landscape of how units are performing. There really isn't a definitive number one, especially when it comes to TURs, and you're going to see this as we go through the units here. So just so you're aware, right, we still are using our same criteria when I assess these units, and how I place them will be based on the following things: consistency, versatility, and power. What do I mean by consistency? Well, what is that unit's job, and do they do it, and do they do it well? Or often enough, right? Secondly, versatility, right? How many different stages can the unit use? The more versatile the unit is, the more likely they're going to find themselves higher on the placement. As well as what other different types of teams, right? It's, are they limited to a singular team? And if so, right, how limited is that team on the stages it can take on? And then finally, power. Sometimes power is all you need, whether that be in raw attack or defense, right? What does the unit do in terms of raw power and defense, and does that eclipse everything else it does? So that is what the main 3 categories we're going to look at, and we will be basing our assessment off of the following stages. So we will do 2 tier lists here. We will still have the long event tier list and the short event tier list, right? It'll be structured similar for each one. For the long event tier list, we will be looking at Birth of the Shadow Dragon's Boss Rush. That is the final stage here, right, that was added during the Global Dokkan campaign, as well as the boss rush for the Divine Wrath and Mortal Will, and the new Broly event. Festival battles will be a consideration, but it will not be the biggest consideration. It'll be an acknowledgement of the unit's prowess, but it won't be a detriment to or from the unit. On the short end, when we get to the short end, we will be looking at the special battle and the hybrid Saiyans red zone, because that's kind of where we're at now. So let's kick it off with the tier list. Since we're not really structuring it around specific units, what we'll do is we'll just go through each unit based on their release and we'll start with the New Year's unit and work our way through all of the units this year. Now, if a unit is not placed, on a category, that doesn't mean they're good. That just means they're not from year 10. As we progress through the rest of this year, I'll kind of slide more characters into where I see fit, if they're from 2024 or I doubt anybody from 2023 is making it onto this list, but anybody from last year that's still sort of usable, we'll slide them onto the list here. So starting with the New Year's units, we'll start with Daima Goku, right? I think I would actually kind of place him, if this was pre-GDC, I would probably place him up here in the S tier, because in the S tier, right, if you guys remember, he was pretty much a must run on every team for taking down the Jiren and the the Jiren in both fights. His only struggle really was Blue Goku, because that fight obviously canceled dodge, but otherwise he was pretty he was pretty good in both of these longer fights. He did obviously not very useful in Festival, but I have seen clears with him, so pre-GDC I probably would have had him in the S tier. Now post-GDC, I do find it a little bit tougher to place him on teams just because of the way that the post-GDC teams are structured, so I would probably have him currently at the moment in A tier. Glorio, on the other hand, who released alongside of him, I would probably still have in the S tier for the teams that you were going to run him on. Teams like STR Cells, teams like Hits, teams like what other teams are he on? TUR'S, mission execution teams. He's pretty much a must run on those teams. He's pretty good, and in fact, there's quite a few Festival of Battle teams that require him as lead in order to structure the team, in order to take it down for specific missions. So honestly, he's still probably got the S tier. Both of them are doing great things for support, and that's why I would probably not take them off of any list currently this year for long events, because they're still incredibly useful in longer events. Moving on to another, the next Dokkan Fest released after them was the Daima Vegeta. Now, you guys know Daima Vegeta. Daima Vegeta is not a long event character. He's sort of a mid-range character. He was really designed around the battle-hardened formidable foes, which will also be a consideration for short events. But for long events, once he kind of got to his point, he was there, and it wasn't a bad point, right, in the early parts of the year, right, for tanking the Jiren hits and the Blue Goku hits. Like, he could do it once he got fully built up, as long as he didn't get sealed. But now post GDC, right, with Broly and with these boss rushes dealing 7 million supers, unfortunately Daima Vegeta, I mean, he really struggles to hold it together in the longer events now. So unfortunately for that, I gotta kind of put him down here in D tier for longer events. He's still good in some of the shorter events, right, that aren't hitting that hard. He struggles a little bit in special battles, but it's really just the Rhodes Masu fight. The other fights he actually does kind of all right in, because he can hang pretty safely in slot 1 in those fights. So, outside of Omega, because he can get stunned there, the hybrids fights he does well, but for long fights he's definitely going to still be in the D tier, unfortunately. Kid Goku, this isn't a tough one. This isn't even a question. This dude stacks like crazy, and then he has a free heal. This dude goes straight up into Z tier. He is probably the best, if not one of the best TURs. Like I said, it's really hard to label a definitive TUR currently at the moment, but I will say that if we're looking solely at long events, Kid Goku deserves a spot right up there in the Z tier. Moving on to the next Dokkan Fest release, Dokkan Fest Cell. Now, this is a tough one. Pre-GGC, I probably would have had him significantly lower, like probably down here, right? Being stuck to his team on previously tournament participants, right, was really, really tough for him. And having hit to run 2 of them, that was just awful, right? His revive condition required him to have a, him be the one to take the damage to die, and then only that one is the one who gets the buff. The second one will not get his revive buff, which makes him really difficult to run. However, now with the addition of Hit and with the addition of Omega, he can actually be solidly run. I still don't think he's great for longer events, but I would place him probably in the C tier here. He's definitely not that bad, but he's not as bad as Diamond Vegeta in longer events, but he's definitely not. He's definitely not as good as some of the others on this list. Moving on to the next Dokkan Fest release, we have Blue Kaioken Goku. Now, Blue Kaioken Goku, if we want to talk, consistency, versatility, and power, this dude, I mean, he's probably the most consistent way to kill yourself. He's not that versatile, and he's not that strong. Like, he literally fails in every category for me, unfortunately. And I know some people have seen him do well, but he's one of those where his risks just aren't worth the rewards. His power is too low. But if we are speaking specifically in what he's designed to do and how he does it in long events, he's probably somewhere around either C or D. I'm leaning more towards D because a lot of the longer fights do cancel dodge at the end, and that's kind of his whole shtick. And so unless you're willing to risk bringing UI Goku, Tech UI Goku, which is kind of tough to do, because once you get to about this point in the fight, UI Goku is dodge or die until you use his domain. So this goes for the Broly fight too, right? Broly fight too, pretty much. I mean, he'll actually do all right here, but if you spend any more than a turn, like this is the turn that where you're probably using the domain. But once you get here, like if he's on rotation, you could end up in some trouble if he doesn't die. So. If he doesn't dodge, rather. So it's like he's really dependent on having reps of Universe 7 along with Tech UI to function. So I think I kind of have to put him in D tier for that, right? He just fails across all 3 categories. But interestingly enough, his counterpart, right, the Int Hit, I would actually probably place up here in S tier, just because Hit stacks, right? And he dodges. He stacks pretty fast, but where he tends to fail in this category is his dodge consistencies. He's pretty versatile, right? He doesn't require much to do what he needs to do. He can work on many different teams. Like, he works really well on Tao's team, for example, along with AGL Pycon and Fizz Pycon. Like, he works pretty well on that team. He's got decent power. His active skill sort of combats, right, his major weakness, which is like the dodge canceling, right? So like the Broly fight here cancels dodge, this cancels dodge, and so does Jiren here and Goku here. They both cancel dodge. However, because of his active skill, just straight up giving you a free Ghost Usher, which you would use at that point, it's kind of a non-issue for him, and it'll deal quite a bit of damage for that. So for that, I would put him in S tier, next to Glorio. I think that's pretty fitting. I don't think he's quite at the level of Kid Goku, although pre-GDC I probably would have had him here, but I do think Kid Goku is a little bit better just because, right, he can just straight up tank Broly. And they honestly, they're kind of matching in power. Goku struggles a little bit more to keep up just due to link partners, but if you can pull off a good partner for him, or at least some decent support, that he's going to be better in the long run. Moving on, the next Dokkan Fest is Tao. right? Mercenary Tao, the guy who killed Dokkan. Crazy enough, again, we're talking strictly long events. Tao is kind of hard to place. I think I would place Tao in S tier for long events, because I do think that he's like the way Tao is structured, right? He gets that buff on his initial first turn, right? He is restricted to mission execution, right? Which means, well, I don't want to say he's restricted to it, but you lose access to his active skill without it, or facing, characters, specific types of enemies like Goku's family or Kamehameha. You need characters on that category for him to be better. So, but his power, like, he's actually really strong if you can get his orbs. But that's where also the consistency fails, is his access to Rainbow Orb. Not changing his own orbs after that first turn is really rough for him. But I mean, across long events, he's doing the same thing turn 1 as he is doing on turn 24, right? Like, there's no change there. So I think I would have him in S tier, because his team is actually pretty good, and while he himself could find himself struggling in that, like, his team more than makes up for it. Like, access to Tien, for example, helps out a lot for him, or Hit on his team too. So I probably would have him at S tier for long events. And then that brings us to the final Dokkan Fest for the year, and that is STR Baby. Crazy enough, I do think Baby is getting mad underrated. He is basically AGL Super Saiyan 4 Goku, but the villain version. And even he stacks faster, honestly. Now, he does have guard, but he doesn't have that extra damage reduction that Goku has, or that extra support. Well, for corroded body and mind it does, but it's not a general support like Goku's. But honestly, in terms of consistency, he's very consistent. Once he gets a couple stacks off, he's tanking pretty much every super, and the dodge doesn't matter, right? Because same thing as for the same thing that goes for Hit goes for him as well, right? He can just use his giant form, get out of this phase, and then just tank the normals post super and him be fine. So consistency, he's very consistent. He might miss a dodge here or there, but outside of Festival of Battles, that missed dodge is going to be dealing double digits. And even then, in Festival of Battles, like, the normals all the way up to Vegito are dealing double digits to him for a missed dodge. The only thing that would kill him is probably a super pre-super, and that's it. Versatility, I will admit he's a bit challenging to run versatility wise, but he fits on most of the major villain teams from this year, especially on Omega's team, which is pretty much the only villain team you can run him on anyways, so aside from his own. So I do think that he probably deserves a spot up here next to Kid Goku. And I know that that's crazy to say, but that's where we're at. Like, we've got 2 units here in terms of TURs released for the Z tier, and I think they're pretty well connected here. Now, if we wanted to fill out the rest of this tier list with usable TURs in the that have easy aid or super easy aid, this is where the list starts to get interesting, right? Because if we start filling in from, say, we'll start with GDC, right? So if we start with the GDC TURs, right, like, in long events, they pretty much all function the same. So honestly, I would probably put each one of these guys, all for long events, all in the same category, because Rose and Vegito can both even run in festivals. Like, once they get built up, it doesn't matter turn 1 or turn 50, they're doing the same thing. And the counters and the support are just incredible. Goku, great long event character, once again, can also be taken all the way into Festival of Battles. Goku is great. These guys are all great because they actually kind of work in both long and short events. But for long events, I would probably have them up here in S tier. For the Gogeta, same thing. I probably, actually, honestly, I would probably have him in Z tier because he clears all three of these. He can slot into any team with no restrictions. Goku's a little more restricted. He can slot in to any team. He's got a ton of power, right? He probably belong as a easy ATUR. He probably belongs up here in Z tier. Moving on, Yamcha, not a great long event character, so I would probably place him down in D tier. Well, he caps out right after turn 6, and then he actually gets weaker. Like, he doesn't get weaker, but he's not going to be dealing as much damage. He loses some of his power after that, so you don't want to do long events with him, really. Medium to short fights are going to be his best placed. Ginyu is a tough one because theoretically he should be good for long fights, but he's not because his transformation condition is so difficult to pull off that he ends up, he stacks so well, he's pretty tanky. You can't take the damage you need to get him transformed into building up the attack, and that's where the problem comes in for Ginyu. So honestly, I would probably put Ginyu over here in probably B tier. He's not, for long events, he's not as bad as Cell, but he's definitely nowhere meeting the rest of these guys here. STR Omega, just like the Yamcha and these guys here, he's not really designed for long events, right? Because his defense is pretty much what it is turn 1. That's what he's got throughout the entire fight, and it's not terrible, but since he doesn't get any major defense on super, you're stuck with what you're stuck with. And so the longer the fight goes on and the more the boss builds up, the more difficult it becomes for him. So as crazy as he is, not that great for long fights. Vegeta, I would probably put him down here next to Ginyu. He's not terrible for longer fights. He builds up nearly as much as Goku. He's only about a million or so off from what Goku is, but the difference is like his defense is pretty much all on super, which means he's stuck in the 3rd slot pretty much, which means he really struggles to maintain in longer fights that have AoEs. He struggles to maintain in longer fights that continue to build up because he always has to continue to rebuild since he's floating. So I would probably place him in B tier. He's an option. He's not the best option up here in like the S tier, but he is an option. If we move on to the next set of easy ATURs, we are looking at Pikkon and Janemba. Now, for the longer fights here, I would probably rate one of his major things is he's a dodge or die unit, right? Being right where he would have really struggled is in the Jiren and the Blue Goku fight. Well, actually, he doesn't struggle in the Blue Goku fight because of his attack and defense lowering. And then the Jiren fight here for the dodge canceling, the same thing, he would struggle, and then again for the Broly fight. But the crazy thing about him is that just like the hit, he has that Ghost Usher ability. So while not specifically designed for long fights, I would probably put him right in the middle at probably C tier. He's not the best unit for long fights, but he is an option. He supports and he does have that Ghost Usher ability, which can help in a lot of those fights, especially like the new Broly fight. Moving on, Janemba. Now, honestly, early on in the year, I had Janemba much lower, but now with long fights, I have him a little bit higher, probably the same place as Ginyu and Vegeta, right? He builds attack, and his defense is well enough to hold him through much of Festival of Battles, right? He can tank right in his base form before transforming while he's stacking attack. He can pretty much tank every major normal in these fights, and even some of the supers. Like if we talk like the Shadow Dragons boss rush, pretty much up to ice he's tanking the supers, and then once you get to Sen is when he really starts to struggle. But at Sen, you're going to transform into his dodge state anyways. With this fight, same thing, right? Pretty much up to Vegito, he is tanking, and Vegito is nice because he can be attack lowered, so you can kind of swing holding off on transforming him until then. And then same goes for special battles. I've seen people pull off special battles by like holding onto him till about the UI Goku phase and then transforming him there, and it works. He's not the greatest damage wise, but it works. And then finally, who else do we have next here? We have the AGL Cell and the STR Goku. AGL Cell I would probably place here next to Daima Goku. He builds up really easy, really quickly, right? He can easily get to 50 million attack. Unfortunately, he is also a dodge character, so a lot of the dodge canceling fights can be a struggle for him, but his team more than makes up for it because they do have, you know, you have the likes of Hits, you have Pycon, you have Tao, you have a lot of options on the teams that he can run on that make dodge canceling not an issue. And he by that point you can just move him to slot 2 or slot 3 and he'll tank most of what's thrown at him anyway. So I would probably put him in A tier for that. He's not really as bad as people make him out to seem. Same goes for these guys. I would probably put them in A tier as well. They are great options, the STR Goku and Gohan, but not anything too crazy. Just like the Janemba, they do stack attack permanently, but no defense. They are dodge or die. They do have sort of a 4-turn limit once you exchange into Gohan. But at that point, you know, the fight is pretty much over anyways. So as long as you're not overextending that 4 turns, it more than pays for itself. And so in longer fights, like the boss rush fights, I do find that they do work pretty well. So I would probably have them in A tier. Moving on, the Blue Kaioken Goku he would definitely go into B tier for this one, because this he stacks attack. All right, but his defense is so low that sometimes his damage reduction just isn't enough to tank the normals that he needs to tank, right? And the longer the fight goes on, the more apparent that comes. You combine that with the lower, you know, the HP lowering that he does, while that does help tech Blue Kaioken Goku, it can harm the team more than it helps. So he's kind of a middle tier option. But of course, being limited to certain teams like the Kaioken Goku's team definitely doesn't help him either. Moving on, we have the Kid Goku. He is an excellent unit for both long and short fights. He slides right into the S tier. What he's doing turn 1, he's doing turn 4, turn 47, turn 73. He's doing the same thing. Now, of course, you're not going to take him into Festival of Battles, but for the current landscape of long fights, because of the extra damage reduction he provides, the extra the extra support, and of course having that nuking style passive does help him out a lot. As long as you can get 10 or more orbs, you're pretty much in the clear for every major fight, right? Whether it's the boss rush, right? He can tank Sen's super, his 7 million super, with at least 10 orbs, which is pretty easy to get with him. Moving on, next we have the Vegeta. This guy goes straight into D tier. He is not designed for long fights. He's got a cap of 8 turns, and once that cap goes down, he sort of drops off, and even then, right, he's still more of a third slot tank than anything. He's a great option for short events, not for long events. Next we have the GT Duo, and these guys actually kind of go in the middle of the road for long events, right? They're in beats here. They're not. Actually, you know what? I would probably move them a little bit higher. They're options. And on the GT Heroes, for long events as floaters, they work more than fine. They're getting more than enough defense. Goku is easily clearing 5 to 7 million with his orbs, which makes it very easy for him to tank what things he needs to tank. You combine that with the added support and damage reduction coming from the likes of AGL Gogeta or AGL Super Saiyan 4 Goku, and they slide right in decently on these longer fights. Goku especially. Moving on, the Janemba and Gogeta, these guys probably for longer fights are going to go down in Z tier. Or C tier, just because their options, they're there. They're great support options. This guy being locked to slot 1 really hurts him a lot. But for the teams that you would ideally put him on, it's really not that bad, right? Especially now with the introduction of Dokkan Fest Baby. So he can be an option for the fights, but the longer the fight goes on, the riskier he becomes. Gogeta is very good in longer fights as long as attack lowering is available, which in the Jiren fights this was true, not so much in these fights, but as long as he can avoid the super, he is tanking Omega Shenron. If he can avoid the super, he is tanking the Jiren's. Well, actually, I think I've had him tank Jiren super before with enough rainbow orbs. The Broly is a little tough because he pretty much can only be on turn 1. If he's beyond turn 1, it gets a little dicey with him, especially being at type disadvantage. But he is an option for certain fused fighters team as sort of just a floating, a floating support unit. But that's why he's down here as C, because he's not really building anything. What you see is what you get with him. With our with Tech Cell, same thing. Pretty much, all of these are probably all C options for long events, and I say that because none of them are specifically designed for long events. They're options. They can be tossed on the team, and I know that that's also true for these guys, but they just aren't as helpful on the teams that you want them on. Buhan maybe a little more. I could see going up to B. Actually, he could probably go up to A. For Omega's team, he provides a lot of extra damage that doesn't normally that you wouldn't normally get. His main problem is just link partners now. He had great link partners early on in the year, but as the meta sort of evolved past Buhan's team, it is a bit of a struggle to get him to get him hitting those big numbers. Although I think I've had him hit some pretty decent numbers on Omega's team. So I could see him jumping up to A, honestly, on Omega's team. This guy's tough because theoretically he should be just as good as him, but for some reason, as a Vegito Blue, but for some reason he's not, right? His defense is a little bit lower. He's a little bit more risky to run, but he's an option. And you know what? I could probably move him here to B. So this is kind of what I'm thinking for the long event tier list. This is how I've wanted to do tier lists for a long time. I think it gives a better picture of how we could look at structuring units, and it really is. It just gives us a clearer picture of the landscape of the game, right? And this is strictly for long fights. And honestly, you could even just collapse this and just stop it at C, and I probably wouldn't argue this, right? Like if we just remove D altogether and stopped it there, I probably wouldn't argue that. Like this would be a pretty decent list here, and again, it just gives it a better picture. So we are about at the 30-minute mark here, so I think I'm gonna have to make my short tier list a little bit quicker than the last one, so I apologize for this one taking this long. The subsequent videos will not be as long since we don't have to do as much as explaining. So if we want to come over here to short tier list, this is going to be pretty quick and pretty easy. So Z tier for short, well, actually, we'll just go down the list. So Baby for short, he actually falls into the Z category still, because just like AGL Super Saiyan 4 Goku, he works both well in short and long events. Obviously, longer events means he gets more attack, but his scouter, his teams, his giant ape, they all work regardless of long or short, and they're extremely helpful in both. So he probably goes in Z tier for that one too. For the next Dokkan Fest, Tao, gonna put him up here in Z tier too. He works well in all of the special battle events. I've cleared each one of them with his team with ease. He is pretty good. Next Dokkan Fest, right hit, not as good in short events. In fact, because the short events hit really strong, that I probably have to put him in the middle. He's an option. He helps a lot, but I don't think he's the best option. So I would probably place him in A tier. For Kaioken Goku, he works a lot better. I mean, I guess I could put him in C tier as opposed to D tier, but I mean, he's just a really, really badly designed unit. It's rough. It's really rough with him. STR Cell, actually now on Omega's team, honestly, this is gonna sound crazy, but I kind of think he's S tier. He does a lot now, right? On Omega's team, he is insane with the support buff, with the domain buff. As long as you have at least one other unit like AGL Cell on Omega's team, you can run his domain, and that can save you a couple of turns of Omega's domain. So it's really a non-issue. So honestly, I would probably put him S tier, and I know that that's crazy to think, but that's where he's at. Moving on, I do think Kid Goku is still Z tier. So you'll notice a pattern here between our long and our short events. It's pretty much a lot of the same characters. I do think that the three top TURs right now are pretty much tied when it comes to short events. I would probably give the hand more to Kid Goku just because he's a little more versatile, but I mean, this is where we're at with short events. Moving on to the next one, we have the next release. We have Daima Vegeta, who for short events, I'm probably dropping him in B tier. He's much higher. Pre-10th anniversary, with Battle Hardened Formidable Woes being the hard short event, I probably would have him up here A or S. But for post GDC, where you have things like Trunks hitting like a train, it's a little bit of a struggle for him, more so than it used to be. He can still work. He's not bad, but he is locked to slot 1, which means that he is. I would probably place him B tier right now. And then Daima Goku and Glorio moving in here. Glorio and Daima Goku actually move. Daima Goku moves up. Glorio's back in S tier. Daima Goku moves up just because his dodge, his support is very useful for clearing out short events quicker. As long as they don't cancel dodge, which there aren't any at the current moment. So, yeah, Daima Goku gets to move up to S tier. Now, moving on to Easy A's and Super Easy A's. This dude, for short fights, I mean, it should be no question. Honestly, the Z tier is actually pretty packed for short fights. These guys do so much in these short fights that it's just crazy. So the Z tier is actually kind of packed for short fights. Like, these are the TURs. I mean, if you really wanted to argue, you can maybe move Goku down, but honestly, I think these guys all kind of deserve a top slot. AGL Vegeta, probably more in the A slot. He's not as bad as these guys down here, and in fact, I think he's a little bit better than Hit. But again, his main issue, the defense on Super, he makes him really weak to the Rosemasu stage and the Goten and Trunks stage. So, given that, I would probably place him A tier. Vegito and Rose both belong in S, right? This is pretty much their long or short. This is where they're at. This guy is just straight out for short events. Ginyu just doesn't work. Yamcha would actually probably place in S tier for short events, right? If you've used him in special battle, you know what kind of monster he is in those fights. So Yamcha gets an S tier ranking for the short events. His only real struggle is the Gohan, Goten, and Trunks fight, but he can still run post Super. He just can't go in slot 1, right? So you could easily have him a second or third slot when dealing with Gohan as an option. Moving on, we have the Blue Kaioken Goku. Not great for short fights. He's probably gonna go here. I mean, I guess he's an option if you really want to throw Goku, but I don't know. Both of them are kind of rough in short fight. He's rough in any fight. He's a little bit better in longer fights, but still, you know, you're running a big risk here. Janemba needs time to transform, so he's not that great. In fact, I would probably place him here more for short fights. Pycon gets an I would probably put in A tier for short fights. Like the hit, he provides a lot, honestly. And if you wanted to move him up into S, I wouldn't argue with you, right? He's got a great chance to dodge. He's got support. He's got an usher. He's got a lot going on for him. Really good on the Tao team. Really helpful on Hit's team. It just, you know, he's a great option altogether. Cell would probably put him probably place AGL Cell more on the this team on this side here, just due to him needing longer to transform and really see his peak. You're not going to see his peak, but he is an option to help out with STR Cell. Same goes for Tech Cell, for that matter. I'd probably place him in the same, just because he's kind of capped at his defense. It's not bad. In fact, I would probably run him over AGL Cell for the short fights, but it's still, he is dependent on orbs, which Omega's team is already kind of orb hungry. This guy is right out for short fights. The dodge just isn't worth the attack that he can build during that time. Is just not worth it. Kid Goku gets an S tier ranking, just because of everything that he's doing. Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta would probably place over here next to Daima Goku, right? Or Daima Vegeta, because you're probably running them together. These guys get an S tier ranking for the special battle for all the same reasons I put them in long events, but it's even more apparent in the short battles because they can easily tank, and they really help with the attack and defense lowering for Zamos and Rose. So really helpful there. This guy would probably... I would go B, right? He's an option. He's not a great option just because some of these fights hit really hard. He is an AoE victim. It really does struggle, but he does help with the attack and defense lower for the Rosemoss phase. Or the Rosemoss fight. Omega, is a bit of a struggle for him, and same with the Gogeta fight, but he does, and the Blue Goku fight. So it's a little rough for him, so I'd probably move him here. Janemba would actually move up to A tier for that. On Baby's team, really helpful for these short fights. Really helpful Corroded Body and Mind member. AGL Vegito would probably put here in A tier as well. Again, he's an option, works really well on the Fused Fighters team. Just he's a worse Blue, right? Blue at least has dodge to dodge the supers. This guy just has to take them full face, and it's not that great. Buhan gets an S tier because of Omega's team. He can easily take down each and every single one of these fights on the special battle, no problem. So it's like, yeah. And then finally, for we'll close the video out with, of course, placing this guy here in his own special category. This is our dude. All right, we gotta pay respects, right? So yeah, thank you guys for sticking around. This was a long one. This is gonna be longer than most other tier list videos that I do, but I felt like it had to be done, right? If I wanted to do this properly and really showcase that this is how I want to structure tier lists from now on, I don't think it's appropriate anymore to do a 1 through 10. I think that this gives us a much clearer example of where the levels are at of, you know, versus various fights. Because, you know, if we just look at the top list here for the short fights, for example, like any one of the special battle stages could easily tap one of these guys if the wrong conditions are set, right? You get Goku locked in slot 3 in the Zamos fight, and he eats Zamos' super. He's dead. But that doesn't make him the worst unit here because that happens, right? He has a fight where bad things can happen to him. In all the other fights where he can remain slot 1 and slot 2, he's a god. Gogeta, as long as he can remain slot 2 or slot 3, he's a god. But same thing, if he gets locked slot 1, he's in trouble. So right, each one of these characters has pluses and minuses, and that was the idea behind doing the matchmaking tier list, because that's really what it is now. All of these the TURs and the LRs we've seen have all been structured around specific fights. This has pretty much been true since Golden Week. However, you know, it would take forever and a day to do every unit, every fight. So I figured doing a more appropriate tier list, something I've wanted to do for a very long time, and I think now is the best time to do this. A more structured tier lists, more proper tier list, I think is a better way to look at the units. So guys, that is it for the video. If you like the video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And in the comments down below, let us know, what do you think of doing tier lists like this, separating them both long and short, and then doing a more traditional style tier list? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. And let us know if you want to see more of this in the future. Otherwise, guys, as always, thanks for watching, and aloha.